All right, let's dive into something I think is super important for everyone to get, really wrap their heads around the world of visual impairment. We're going to be looking at uh, that tricky line between curiosity and, when does it cross over into discrimination? And we've got a really interesting source this time to help us sort of explore that.
Yeah, it's a YouTube video from Tiflo Academy. It's called Curiosidades de las personas con discapacidad visual, capítulo 1, primera temporada. And it's hosted by a guy named Angel, and he gives a really authentic insider perspective.
And he jumps right in, right off the bat. He's talking about that word blind.
Hmm.
And, is it offensive? Is it not? And what really stood out to me is when he says it's not the word itself, but it's the intention behind it. And that's such an important distinction, right?
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like with any kind of sensitive topic, the way we approach it, the way we frame the conversation is more important than the specific words we use. It's about respect and a genuine desire to understand someone's experience.
And I love how he uses the example of being asked, how did you become blind?
Hmm.
Because, let's be honest, it's a question a lot of us might have, but it can be so easily misconstrued.
Totally. Angel, who himself has congenital blindness, meaning he was born blind, he explains that the question itself isn't inherently offensive, right? It's the way it's asked.
Says, are you asking because you actually want to know about his journey? Or are you just kind of staring at the fact that he can't see?
Exactly, yeah. And he makes the point that, for people who haven't experienced visual impairment, it's natural to have questions and to not fully grasp what it's like. So it's not about shaming anyone, it's about opening up a dialogue.
It's so refreshing to hear. We think about, how often we kind of tiptoe around these things, or we're afraid to even ask for fear of saying the wrong thing. But maybe that fear actually keeps us from learning and connecting with each other.
I think it does, yeah. And this kind of ties into what I find most fascinating about Angel's message, which is he's really a huge advocate for curiosity, but not just any kind of curiosity.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, he talks about how he's fascinated by how people with all kinds of disabilities navigate the world. Like, he uses these examples, cooking with one hand or maneuvering a wheelchair on a lift. And it's not about focusing on what people can't do. It's about being curious about their unique experiences and how they approach these challenges.
I see what you mean. It's like shifting that perspective makes all the difference. Instead of seeing limitations, we start to see ingenuity and resilience.
Exactly, yeah. Angel even goes so far as to say that this kind of curiosity, not pity, is what actually leads to genuine admiration and understanding. It's about seeing people's strengths and celebrating their differences.
Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. And I think it sets the stage for a really important conversation about discrimination, which Angel doesn't shy away from either.
No, he doesn't. He shares this one example that I think really highlights, that kind of unconscious bias that people with disabilities often face.
Yeah, where he talks about the assumption that a visually impaired person couldn't possibly, contribute meaningfully in a tech-focused job. And that just blew my mind because technology is constantly evolving to be more accessible and opening up so many possibilities.
Exactly. It really speaks to that larger issue of how society often places limits on people with disabilities based on, these preconceived notions rather than recognizing their potential.
And what I think is so powerful about Angel is he doesn't let these misconceptions define him. He doesn't let that discrimination diminish his sense of self-worth.
Yeah,
He actually talks really openly about the emotional challenges of visual impairment.
he does. Yeah. And it's not just focusing on the practical aspects, right? He dives into that emotional landscape, which can be just as, if not more challenging. He talks about feelings of sadness, isolation, things that so many people can relate to, regardless of ability, really. And this is where I think it gets really interesting because he doesn't shy away from these difficult emotions. He actually emphasizes the importance of addressing them head on.
Like not just sweeping them under the rug.
Exactly, yeah. He argues that not dealing with these emotions can lead to self-marginalization. It's like internalizing that discrimination you face and letting it limit your own potential.
Wow. I never thought of it that way. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you believe you're limited, you act accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this connects back to what we were talking about earlier with curiosity. When we approach those challenges with that kind of curious mindset, we're more likely to find creative solutions, and overcome those limitations.
So it's not just about being curious about others. It's also about being curious about ourselves
Yeah.
and our own potential.
Exactly, yeah. And one of the things that Angel talks about that just blew my mind was how losing sight can actually heighten other senses. He describes it almost like a superpower.
Okay, yeah. I've heard about that, but I've always wondered how it actually works.
Well, it's all thanks to the amazing plasticity of the brain. When one sense is diminished, the brain can actually adapt and rewire itself, strengthening other senses.
So it's like the brain's compensating for the loss of sight by boosting other areas.
Exactly, yeah. And this isn't just, some theoretical concept either. Studies have shown that visually impaired individuals often develop these exceptional skills in areas like music, spatial awareness, and even memory.
Oh, that makes sense. And Angel actually shares a personal anecdote about pursuing music. Even though people discouraged him because of his blindness, it really showcases his determination and
Yeah.
the power of believing in yourself.
It does, yeah. And it also speaks to the importance of having that supportive network, too. Angel credits his family for encouraging him to follow his passions, which just reminds us how crucial it is to have those people who believe in us, especially when we're facing challenges.
And, this whole idea of the brain rewiring itself is fascinating. Makes you wonder just how adaptable we humans really are. Like, if our brains can adapt in such incredible ways, what else are we capable of?
That's a great question. It definitely suggests that, our limitations are often self-imposed. We have far more capacity for growth and adaptation than we realize.
And this brings us to another fascinating point that Angel makes. He talks about how visually impaired people touch everything. Now, on the surface, that might seem like a simple observation, but he dives into why that
He
is.
explains that it's not about being creepy or intrusive or anything like that. It's about building a mental map of the world through tactile exploration. It's how they learn about shapes, textures, spatial relationships.
So it's like they're creating a three-dimensional understanding of their surroundings through touch.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that this is a natural way of navigating and understanding the world, just like, sighted people use their vision to do the same.
And remember, he also talks about, visually impaired people being able to detect vibes, meaning they're really good at picking up on people's energy or their intentions. And I found that so intriguing.
Yeah, it speaks to that heightened sensitivity that often develops when one sense is diminished. And he really encourages people to be open and honest in their interactions. With visually impaired individuals, recognizing that they can often sense insincerity or discomfort.
So it's like being more attuned to those subtle cues that sighted people might miss.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good reminder that communication goes beyond just words, right? Our tone of voice, our body language, even our energy can convey so much information.
Yeah, this is making me rethink how I interact with everyone, not just people with visual impairments. It's a good reminder to be more mindful and present in all our interactions.
Absolutely. And this also ties into another point that Angel makes about challenging assumptions. He addresses this common misconception that all visually impaired people are musical. And while many do excel in music, he emphasizes that it's not a universal trait.
It's like saying all left-handed people are artistic. It's a stereotype that just doesn't hold up.
Exactly. And this is important because it reminds us to see individuals for who they are, rather than through the lens of these preconceived notions.
It's about recognizing the diversity within the visually impaired community,
Hmm.
just like there's diversity within any group of people.
Right. And then Angel takes us on this fascinating journey into the world of dreams. He explains that for visually impaired individuals, dreams aren't always about visual images. They can involve other senses, like sound, touch, even emotions.
That's really interesting. So their dreams are like a sensory tapestry woven from different experiences.
Exactly, yeah. And it raises all these fascinating questions about the nature of consciousness and how our senses shape our experience, even in the realm of dreams.
He also mentions that visually impaired people can dream about things they've never seen, like colors or specific objects. How is that even possible?
Well, I think it speaks to the power of the human imagination
Mm.
to transcend physical limitations, right? It suggests that our minds can create experiences that go beyond our immediate sensory input.
It's like our brains are capable of filling in the gaps,
Yeah.
drawing on our knowledge, emotions, and memories to create a complete picture, even if it's not based on visual information.
That's a great way to put it. It really highlights the extraordinary adaptability and creativity of the human mind.
I'm so glad we took this deep dive. It's really challenged my assumptions and opened my eyes to a whole new way of seeing the world.
Yeah, and remember, this is just the first chapter in Angel's series. There's so much more to explore and learn about the lived experiences of visually impaired individuals.
Absolutely. And Angel's enthusiasm is contagious.
Hmm.
He truly believes that by understanding each other better, we can create a more inclusive and compassionate world.
He does, yeah. His message of hope and resilience is incredibly powerful. He encourages visually impaired individuals to embrace their abilities, challenge limitations, and really just live their lives to the fullest.
And he reminds us that we all have a role to play in creating a more inclusive society. Whether it's asking questions with genuine curiosity, advocating for accessibility, or simply treating each other with respect, we can all make a difference.
It all comes back to recognizing that diversity just enriches our lives, and everyone deserves a chance to contribute their unique talents and perspectives.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking, that we know someone's experience just because they have a certain disability. But Angel's video really underscores that everyone's journey is unique.
It is, yeah. And he encourages us to approach each other with these open hearts and minds, to be willing to listen and learn from one another without judgment.
One of the things that really hit home for me was his emphasis on emotional well-being. It's not just about the physical aspects of visual impairment, but it's about addressing those emotional challenges too.
Yeah. He's incredibly candid about his own struggles with, sadness and isolation,
Yeah.
self-doubt. And by sharing those personal experiences, he destigmatizes those emotions and encourages others to seek support and find those healthy coping mechanisms.
And he challenges that idea that people with disabilities need to put on this brave face all the time.
Yeah.
It's like it's okay to feel that full range of human emotions, including, anger and frustration and sadness.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about acknowledging those feelings, processing them in a healthy way, rather than suppressing them.
Which reminds me, he also talks about the importance of a family support. He credits his parents for encouraging him to pursue his passions and believe in himself, which highlights how crucial it is to have that supportive network.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Loved ones can play such a vital role in helping individuals with disabilities overcome challenges and achieve their full potential. But, Angel also recognizes that individual support isn't enough. He advocates for systemic change to create a more inclusive society, calling for better access to education, employment, and healthcare.
It's about looking beyond those individual stories
Yeah.
and addressing those underlying societal structures that perpetuate inequality.
Exactly. He's urging us to examine our own biases and work to dismantle those barriers that prevent people with disabilities from participating fully in society.
So ultimately, what I'm taking away from Angel's video is that it's a call to action. It's a call for greater understanding, empathy, and advocacy.
Yeah. He's not just sharing his story, he's inviting us to join him in creating a more inclusive and just world.
He leaves us with this powerful message of hope and empowerment, believing that we can build a world where everyone is valued and respected, regardless of their abilities or disabilities.
Absolutely. And it starts with each of us. What can you do to foster greater understanding and inclusion for people with disabilities in your own community?
Maybe it's starting a conversation with someone who has a disability,
Yeah.
or volunteering your time at an organization that supports them.
Yeah. Or even just being more mindful of the language you use and the assumptions you make. Remember, even small actions can have a ripple effect.
I love that. Angel's story reminds us that even in the face of adversity, people with disabilities are just as capable and talented and resilient as anyone else. And by embracing diversity and celebrating our differences, we can create a richer, more vibrant world for everyone.
I completely agree.
So let's keep the conversation going. Let's challenge our assumptions, ask questions, and work together to build a more inclusive future.
Yeah, let's do it.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving for a world where everyone can thrive.